candidates, what we're going to do, how things will go, and what our rules are. Again, the same thing. There will be a 2-minute introduction of themselves. Questions, there will be a 1.5 minutes. If we have time, hopefully we have a chance for a question or two from the floor, and then we'll end up with probably a 2-minute summary. So anything, otherwise, let them introduce themselves. We'll start out with whoever had one.
So I want to thank you, the Kimball Chamber of Commerce and Kimball High School for hosting this forum. My name is Jim Reed. I live in Avon. My wife and I celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary this year, and then turned around a couple days later in March to the St. Joseph 4th of July parade. I teach political science at the College of St. Benedict and St. John's University. I've done that now for 30 years. It's my job to encourage young men and young women to be active, informed citizens. I decided to run for this office because I was troubled by how deeply and angrily divisive our politics has become. People see this from both sides of the political aisle. Everyone admits that it's happening. No one knows really quite how to change it. I firmly believe that one of the best ways we have to change this is conversation among citizens in our communities. I don't think that it's going to change in Washington and St. Paul until it changes among us. We, as citizens, have to be willing to talk to people that think differently than we do. So, in my own campaigning, I've gone out door to door. I started going door to door nearly a year ago. I've been now to more than 8,000 households. I've had innumerable conversations. I've learned so much from these conversations. If I'm elected, I would be honored to take the pieces of information, the perspectives that I've gotten from the people that I've met. I've door knocked in the last several weeks in and around Kimball. It's been fun learning to know this community, some of its businesses. I went down one street and they said, everybody here is named Knaus, and they're not going to be home because they're going to be at the sausage shop. I met the owner of the Kimball rail car repair company, and I said I'd like to know some of the stories about how those needed to be repaired. So it's fun learning, getting to know a community. Thank you so much for inviting me. I look forward to this forum.
Okay, I'm a guy of average height. I got to adjust that. So, my name is Jeff Howe. I'm your state representative for 13A, and as you know, with Michelle Fischbach, she got sued personally, so she decided that to resign as a senator and become lieutenant governor. And with that, then she asked me to run for her Senate seat. People say, well, why would you want to run for the Senate seat? And people go, well, you're going to get a 4-year term. Well, in this case, that doesn't work because I get to fill out hopefully get to fill out the last 2 years of Senator Fischbach's term. And then we get redistricted and we get another 2 years. So actually, until 2022, you won't get a 4-year term. So why would I want to run? There's no dollars in it. There's all there is a second half of the district, which means I get more work. Well, when I looked at it, I thought it was the Senate is tied 33-33. It's all three. Whoever wins this Senate race brings that party into the majority. Currently, the Senate, the last two sessions, the Republicans have had the majority, and we have tried to fix health care. I think we still have more work to do. We've decreased next year, in 2019, premiums are going to go down by as much as 33%, which is huge. So that's why I'm running, because I think it's important to keep those of us that continue to work for you in the majority. I think I've done a good job for you as a state representative, and I hope to continue to serve you as your state senator. Thank you.
My name is Lisa DAYmith. I'm from Cold Spring. Lived there for 20 years. I'm married to Nick. We have 4 children, 2 sons-in-law, 3 grandkids, and family is a great priority of ours. I also own, along with my husband, a small business. I handle all of the property management, and I've had a chance to work with different organizations and different agencies, Minnesota Department of Health, Department of Ag, and so I have a little bit of experience of how that can work. We're very close to a watershed district, and so I've had some experience with that. I have served on our Ricori School Board for the last 11 years. I won my first term as a write-in, decided to run for 2 additional terms, and decided a year ago that I wasn't going to be seeking re-election. I felt that I had the opportunity to serve my community well. When you're dealing with people's taxes and their money, that gives great passion to people as they express what is important to them. So it's also taught me to learn how to listen to my community and make decisions based on what is best for them. My husband also owns a manufacturing business, and so we've seen firsthand in our district in Painesville what our workforce and the lack of employees can do. There's 3 areas that I'd like to focus on if I'm elected, and those are education funding, and that's based on my work on the school board, healthcare, both the cost and accessibility, and then our workforce sustainability. Thank you for being here tonight. I know we are your last show, and I appreciate you being here.
I'm State Representative Dean Urdahl. I have District 18A, which is Meeker County, 3 townships in McLeod County, and 1 township in Red County. So all you people in my district, please stand up. That's what I got. I'm just here for fun. Actually, I didn't plan on being here tonight. I spoke at the Norway House in Minneapolis tonight, and it announced that I could not be here. And then when I saw I was going to get done at 7 o'clock, and this was 8:45, I could actually get here. And so, surprise, here I am. By the way, Representative Howe, one of the real benefits is you get a white wig and a robe. It's the difference between senators and House members. I have been for 16 years in the Minnesota House. I chair the Capital Investment Committee, the Bonding Committee, and it's kind of a big deal to work on that committee, to chair it, and try to fulfill at least as many of the infrastructure needs of the state of Minnesota as we can. And so that's one big reason why I'm running for re-election. Of course, I have an interest in education. I taught school American history for 35 years at New London Spicer, and I have several interests in education that I will be probably espousing later on when we talk about the various questions. So with that, I'll sit on down and we have one more introduction, then we'll get to questions.
Well, I want to thank you for having this forum here tonight. I'm County Commissioner Joe Perske. I was also the mayor of Sartell, and I was also on the council there as well. I've been a teacher for 37 years, 26 years in Sartell, 7 years with the Department of Defense, but I also taught in the Avon and Onami. I've been married to an amazing wife, Jan, for 39 years. We have 3 daughters, and I have 4 grandchildren. I grew up in Sauk Rapids, was an Eagle Scout, went to Apollo High School, and then on to St. John's. But I never planned on running for the state legislature. But through a crazy happening of events, here I am. And when the DFL asked me to run, I said, you know what, I'm very content being county commissioner because I don't have to deal with the partisan politics. And my focus has always been about people. And I said, also, I'm not necessarily the best fit because I'm pro-life, I'm strong on the Second Amendment, and also I've been pretty tight fiscally when I ran the budget in Sartell. But they said, Joe, you know what, we know your life is about people and you care about people. And I said, yes, I do, and I want to make up for a better Minnesota. And I'm frustrated like many Minnesotans because it seems like the legislature comes at each other like the Vikings and the Packers, and they draw that line in the sand. At the end of the bill, at the end of the session, they had a 990-page omnibus bill, and that was put together just the last week of the session. Now, the good legislation was in there that would benefit it, but there was also many things in there of special interest and things that were not desirable to have in there. So the governor vetoes it. We get nothing out of that. A commissioner wouldn't do that, a mayor wouldn't do that. We need to come together. We need to find compromise. Working together, Democrats and Republicans can do this. And I told the DFL, I will not vote party line. I will vote for what's the best for the people of District 13. The Constitution says we the people, not we the party, and we've lost that focus. Also, I promised to run a clean campaign. I like Jeff. I've worked with Jeff. I'm planning to run a campaign for Joe Perske and not against Jeff Howe.
Okay, when it comes to the rising cost of health insurance, what role do you see yourself playing as a member of the Minnesota legislature?
Well, thank you. And I will tell you that we had probably the premier health insurance program in the country before the ACA came along. You know, there's a lot of literature, there's a lot of stuff saying that I don't support, and I voted against coverage for pre-existing conditions. Not true. The only vote they can point to is I voted against Minn. Minn is what ruined, that's what ruined our health insurance program in the state of Minnesota. We always provided health care for pre-existing conditions through the MCHF fund, the Minnesota Comprehensive Health Act. So we had a good system. What I've been doing since then is trying to repair our system from what the ACA did. So we've done a great job from what we've been able to do, and next year you're going to see as much as a 33% decrease in health insurance costs. And I think that we have more to do if we would have a governor that would request an ACA waiver from the federal government. We could continue to get back to what we had before the ACA ruined it, and that's the plan, and that's what I'll continue to work on, is to get back to where we were when we had the premier insurance program in the country. Thank you.
Health insurance and medical crises are something that has hit all of our families. We can't get away from it, and so it's very valuable to have the health insurance coverage at an affordable price when we need it. My family personally, over the last 10 years, experienced two very unexpected and very serious health crises. Had we not had the insurance to cover it at the time, even though it was at great cost to us, we would be in a much different spot right now. I think what we need is more choices, and depending on what type of thing that we need, do we need a higher level of coverage? Are we coming in with those pre-existing conditions? Those need to be taken under consideration, but we do need more choices, and I plan to be part of the solution as we look for options that are going to be best for all Minnesotans.
Well, healthcare certainly is I think our biggest issue in the state of Minnesota right now. I mean, we go in next session, the first thing we do is balance the budget, and that's the goal. But we have to do that in light of our spending on health and human services, which is the fastest growing part of our budget. Now, as Representative Howe was saying, he and I voted for a reinsurance program, and that's what mainly led to the double-digit decreases in insurance that we are getting right now. But even though we're making strides in the right direction, we have a final solution that's not been reached yet. We need to streamline our reporting process to avoid duplication between medical providers. We need to address prescription drug prices, gouging, whatever's going on with that. We need to foster competition between insurance companies in this state and work promotion alternatives. Maybe we should have job training, career counseling that could be looked into in connection with medical assistance. Thank you.
Well, I'll tell you what, through all my door knocking that I had done over the past 5 months, number one issue seems to be about healthcare and the nightmares that are out there, about people that are telling me about what they see and what they've been experiencing. There's a lot of frustration, a lot of nervousness, and a lot of fear. And we continue to see premiums go up, we continue to see deductibles go up, and prescription drug prices as well. But it seems when it's looking for a real solution, we keep kicking that can down the road. We need to find a way that we can make sure that the healthcare is affordable and accessible. Possible solutions that I've seen is, possible the Minnesota Care and also the Minnesota Health Plan, but, maybe there are others out there as well. But I'm willing to look at those. But again, it's coming together and working together. If we go down to the state fair and we walk through the midway, we will see tens of thousands of people. Can you tell me which one of those people you saw doesn't need healthcare? We need to answer the question, are we gonna have healthcare for some or healthcare for all? And if it's healthcare for all, how are we gonna do that? We need to make sure, again, that it's affordable and it's accessible. But the insurance companies, they don't want the one with breast cancer. They don't want the one with diabetes. They don't want to have the one that has pre-existing conditions because they can't make money off those folks. Come together, folks. Let's have some real solutions. It's going to be difficult, but through dialogue, I think we can solve this issue. And those folks that have jobs that are good paying jobs will be able to afford it, but more so those folks on the low income end, they need to have insurance as well.
So when my father was 62 years old, he had to have open heart surgery. Surgery went well. He's still with us at age 92. But at the time, the insurance company refused to pay for his surgery, saying that he changed jobs and got into a new employment, and that he had not disclosed his pre-existing condition. It turns out he'd had a heart all these years and never told anybody. This is the kind of abuse that the ban on pre-existing condition discrimination in the Affordable Care Act is designed to remedy. I don't claim the Affordable Care Act is perfect, but that, at least part of it, I think should represent our basic values in Minnesota. So what roles should I see myself playing as a member of the Minnesota legislature, standing up for certain basic things that are right? We should not be selling health insurance in the state of Minnesota that does not cover mental health. You can probably get it cheaper by telling somebody you're not planning to get mentally ill anyway, but of course, nobody plans to be mentally ill. If that happens to you, then you're imposing those costs on everybody else. Same thing with opioid addiction. So I believe in choices in healthcare, but there are some choices that are irresponsible, and one of them is telling people that it's fine to have healthcare that doesn't cover very basic things. I think we can do more with this and talk about I support expanding the Minnesota Care program to include people of all incomes. I can maybe talk about that in another answer.
How do you plan on dealing with the number of local units and schools that are relying upon funding from the state?
The experience that I've had as a Rocori School Board member has given me the opportunity to see how schools are funded from the inside. And I can tell you, even after 11 years, I still don't fully understand how it works. But one of the things that is a great inequity is our students are given a funding number. So basically, each student in Minnesota is worth a certain amount of dollars that the funding is given to bring into those districts. The inequity in that is that our students in greater Minnesota have less of a dollar amount attached to them than in the 7-county metro area. I feel that all of the students across Minnesota should be worth that same basic funding amount, and we need to equalize that and make it equitable across the board. From there, I also think that we need to give more local control to our school districts, because we know our school districts and what our students and our community needs more than anybody, even as a legislator sitting down in St. Paul. One of the things I'd like to do is continue to work along with the districts that are in 13A, so that I can hear specifically from the superintendents, the staff, and the people working directly in those areas what matters and what they need. My office door would always be open. I would welcome that opportunity, and I also plan to go out to those areas and keep up with what's going on there.
As Ms. DeMuth was saying, the problem with our education funding system is nobody gets it. I mean, there are probably 1 or 2 people in the state that actually understand how we fund schools. We have the same amount for everyone. It's around $9,000 every student in Minnesota. But what she was referring to is something called categorical aids, where each school district, depending on how many free and reduced lunch they have, how many English as a second language, what are the distances involved in travel in their district, that adds on money. And in the Twin Cities and in Duluth, areas like that, they get more money, 16, 17, 18,000 per student instead of the 9,000 or so that we get here. So that's one. I had a bill that passed the House, not the Senate. Fix that. And that was to start over again. If we were going to refinance schools in Minnesota, how would we do it? Let's have a task force, which I created, to come up with a plan on how to best fund our schools if we're starting over again. That's what we need to do.
Well, educational funding is perhaps the most important funding mechanism or thing that the state legislature acts to do, and it's the biggest portion of that. And we need to make sure that we're doing it right. But the inequities there are there. That the metro schools seem to get more dollars than those in the outstate. But the outstates have needs, no question about it. It's unfortunate they oftentimes have to look at operational levies to conduct their schools and to operate. Since the economic times are good, we talked at earlier forums about doing a little bit of catch-up, seeing if we can maybe add 2% or more to the per pupil formula. Also the mandates that are put on the schools. Sometimes we have the mandates that just can't be met economically within those. I just recently learned about a mandate in special ed that there's a ceiling. So once you reach your ceiling, you get no more dollars, even depending upon how many more special ed students you bring into the district. So when new special ed students come into the district with those special needs, you don't have the additional dollars to necessarily address those things. But let me tell you one final thing. I've been a teacher for 37 years. Probably the most important thing is where the rubber hits the road, and that is finding good teachers. We need to make sure that we're focusing on finding good teachers, teachers that really care about the students. And I think each and every one of us can think back to the time that we were in school, and one of those teachers that actually made a difference in our lives. Those are the teachers we got to make sure that we're fostering. Those are the teachers we got to make sure that we're training, and those are the teachers we need to make sure we keep in the profession.
I think all of us in this panel are agreed on the inequity of the funding of districts like this one. What is the reason for this? Well, part of the reason for the inequitable funding is that state funding has dropped significantly since 2003. In 2003, the state paid something like 72% of the cost of education. Is now down to 67%. That money has to be made up in some way, either through cuts in programs or through raises in property taxes. In this district, in this legislative district and this school district, we are way too dependent on property taxes for funding our schools. So the first thing that I would suggest is to go back to the funding system we had before 2003. That will enable us to begin to address these inequitable funding between districts. And I also think one of the things, it's important to make sure that young teachers, new teachers, have a secure economic future. And so many of the school districts in this area, when they're doing a search for new teachers, don't find as many applicants as they would like. It's not a profession that you go in to get rich. And even knowing that you're not going in to get rich, you don't want to dig yourself in a deep hole. So if there's ways in which we in the legislature can help defray the loan burden costs of young teachers who come through their educational system, I would certainly favor a move like that.
Well, I think that Dean stole all my thunder, because that's what I agree with Dean. I supported Dean's bill to create that task force, start from scratch, and re-examine how we would fund schools today. So I support that. So no one talked about the other piece of that question, and that was local units of government. Correct? That was the other piece of that. And I tell you what, local units of government, they need, when they have a great big project, they need bonding for, and I was surprised you missed this being the bonding chair, but that they need bonding for large projects, correct? And so we look at those large projects, we look at the, and I know what's near and dear right now that everybody's working on in Kimball is the library. We also provide library funding and transportation. You look at the transportation needs around, and we also need to look at that. That's another one of our constitutionally requirements. And there's a method, and I know that there's people concerned about taking money out of the general fund, but they don't realize that the motor vehicle sales tax, the MVES fund, that now is constitutionally dedicated, where did that come from? Came out of the general fund. I think the thought about taking the sales tax on automotive parts out of the general fund and funding roads and bridges, because it's all connected. You got sales tax on a new car, you got sales tax on pieces and parts to keep old cars like mine on the road also. It just makes sense to put it towards roads and bridges. Thank you.
What is your plan to deal with the state's economic issues?
First of all, I can go half an hour just on education. You guys want to stick around afterwards? Well, first, keep in mind that right now it's looking like we're going to have about a $1 billion surplus. So we shouldn't be talking about cuts. And speaking of cuts, I've been 16 years, we have never cut education. Even in the middle of a big recession with Plenty, he increased education spending 22%. Now maybe that doesn't keep up with inflation and everything, but we haven't cut. We have a $46 billion budget in the state of Minnesota. We have to prioritize. Education now is 42% of the budget. But the fastest growing part, which is overwhelming everything else unless we find a solution to it, is health and human services. Fastest growing part of our budget. We have to, again, deal with that. What does bonding do? Bonding holds down local property taxes. The pipes under your streets, the wastewater treatment plants, the water towers. If the state didn't help you through bonding money for those things, then the local citizenry would be paying for all of it. And that would be very difficult and make it very difficult for people to live in greater Minnesota. So, give me the zero. I'm done.
Well, we're quite fortunate that we have good economic times because we have a budget surplus. And even at that time, I'll tell you what, I'm not tax and spend. You know me personally, I cut coupons, I change Minn oil, I even belong to the haircut club, and I know the secret handshake there. But I'll tell you what, we do have things we have to address with the education. We gotta make sure, again, if we need to do some catch up, we do the catch up with that. Also roads and bridges, all the way across the state, we've got decaying bridges, we've got decaying culverts in the townships. And the roads are not in that good of shape, and they need to be repaired as well, and we need to continue to make those investments. We can do that by working together, and that's always been a message that I hope to hear when I get down to the legislature, that together we can do more, we can get more done. As a mayor, and as a council member, and as a commissioner, we have always looked at budgets. And I'll tell you one thing, I've looked at those budgets and always taken a look at what are the basic needs that we need to get done. And also then, what can the taxpayers afford? What can the homeowners afford? We don't need to be overtaxing them and overburdening them. As again, at the good times that we have, maybe we can make some better investments, but let's not go hog wild. We can make sure that we can live under our budget so that when the snow flies, we get the snow off the roads. Okay? When we need infrastructure replaced, we can replace it. When we have, when I tell people in the county, I says, well, you need to have all those things happen, and also when you flush the toilet, we got to make sure that stuff disappears, and I think that's what you want as well. Just making sure we meet those basic needs.
So what is your plan to deal with the state's economic issues? Well, first of all, Minnesota is doing better than other states. It's certainly doing better than Wisconsin is right now. So the first thing that I would suggest is that we not wreck it. Let's, whatever we do is be thoughtful and not wreck what was going well with our state. I think the main challenge that I see to our economy is that it's a long-term one. That right now, both education and our transportation infrastructure are chronically underfunded. And particularly on the transportation side, the underfunding comes from the fact that gas tax revenues have dropped. Because for a number of reasons, more fuel-efficient cars, the price of gasoline dropping, that has real consequences. We do need to find other ways of funding our transportation, but we also have to do that in ways that do not deplete the general fund for education. So that's, I see, one of the main challenges we have to do. We do have to face the challenge of an aging infrastructure. It's not only roads and bridges, it's also water mains. There was a water main in my own neighborhood that broke a few years ago. And that's an invisible kind of challenge. We also have to continue with our promise to bring high-speed internet access to rural Minnesota. I go door knocking, I come to dead zones. If I hear about it from one person, I hear it about from 10 people in that area. That is a serious economic challenge. You can't farm, you can't educate unless you address those things. That's one of the things that we need to do.
Well, I think we live in great times right now because I think that what we've been doing the last few years has created great economic times for Minnesota. And witnessing that we're going to end up with a $1 billion surplus. Now, we've got some needs out there. Some of that is we've never built out the mental health process, and that is, to me, very concerning. We got rid of the state mental hospitals, which probably needed to happen, but I tell you what, we did the group homes, and then we stopped. We didn't build out the rest of the mental health. St. Cloud alone, last year, between St. Cloud, between mental health holds, detox, $3.3 million. Most of that was medical assistance. 90% of it was medical assistance. So it isn't that we don't have the money, because there's $3.3 million or close to that we spent. We just need to refigure how we're going to, because those people that went through that cycle never got served. They're just in a loop. We have to figure out how to solve that problem. I would suggest we take some of that $1 billion surplus and fix some of that. We've got infrastructure to do, and we also, I think, need to give a little bit back, because I do believe that you can spend that a lot better than we can at the state. Thank you.
The idea of a surplus when it's in your family and there's extra is always a good thing. To know that the state has a surplus means we need to take a look at how we've taxed and maybe reduce that, so that the state doesn't end up with a surplus, but we put that back into our own pockets of the residents of Minnesota. That's one area that I'd like to look at. The other area is to identify areas that are wasteful spending. What are we actually doing in a way that we don't need to do it, and we could reduce the spending in certain areas. And then also to make sure that our roads and bridges, our infrastructure is strong. The other area is to make sure, with the education background that I have, to make sure that our communities are strong. And I think that can be encouraged and improved at a local level, all the way from our earliest learners through our 12th grade, and then as students go on to college. But those are the three main areas that I would like to focus on.
Okay, do we have any questions from the floor? Remember now, our questions are generic questions and not pinpointed at one individual candidate. I think you might, I don't know if that mic is on or not.
We can probably hear you.
Yeah, it's on. Hi, well, thanks for that form, and my question was, I was trying to look it up just before, but I think there was a border-to-border broadband grant, or border-to-border broadband proposal that didn't go through, unfortunately, and I think it was $35 million over 10 years or something like that, I can't remember, but to me it seemed like a bargain, because I live in one of those kind of dead zones, there's no options for internet, and we're kind of, St. Cloud, and then there's us, and then my question is to you, what would you do for kind of getting border-to-border broadband to people who don't have broadband now? Yeah, thanks.
During this campaign, I've been going out to a good number of the townships, asking them, what many of their concerns are. And as I stated earlier, decaying roads and bridges and culverts, that seems to be one of them. But for many of them too, it's the problem of broadband, and that is that they can't get it. That obviously hurts them economically, it hurts them personally, but also even hurts them educationally. We've got a good number of school districts also that put out web pages or put out information on the kids' home computers, but they take them home and they can't do the lessons like the rest of the kids can. By all means, we need to see what we can do as far as finding those areas that are weak and fostering them to be able to do that so that we can get them. One suggestion that I have made is that make sure that the towns that do have libraries, especially the Great River libraries, that they can send the signal strong enough out into the parking lot so that if there's anybody that has a need for the Wi-Fi with a reasonable strength, can stop by the library and perhaps get that, and at least have that type of access so they're just not out there hanging without anything. But of course, if you talk about border to border statewide, that requires a good number of dollars. And where those dollars come from, is the question. But by all means, I'd be willing to sit down and have the conversation about how do we make that happen.
So yes, broadband costs money, but education also costs money. Education is an investment. Broadband is also an investment. I'd like to look at it in this way. When we do development, we often do development around roads. We plan that a road is going to be there, and people then know that if they build a housing development there, they'll be able to get where they need to go. In the Twin Cities, they plan development around light rail stops. Why can't we also plan development around broadband? Why don't we have that in our minds when we build a housing development, that broadband will be there, just like water and sewer and highways and all the other things. So that is an investment. Yes, it does cost money up front, but our agricultural economy depends upon it, our education economy depends upon it, and so I'm willing to make that investment, and I fully support doing that.
I feel your pain. I'm the poster child for the legislature on not having broadband access. You go across, I live right next to Highway 23. You go across Highway 23, they got cable. You go 2 houses down, they can at least get DHL, or not DHL, whatever CenturyLink provides, right? So you can get that. But there's 2 houses that sit there, and I get my internet off an old TV antenna that I shoot with another antenna that I shoot to a silo 1.25 miles away, and hope that nobody in the barn unplugs the wrong thing, because then we all lose it. So that's my internet. So, and what really frustrates me, there is a cell tower directly across the road from me, so I know there's fiber in the ditch going to that cell tower, and I can't get it. And I will tell you that I truly believe that it's affecting home sales. Because I tell you what, I was just looking at a place the other day, and I'm sitting there, that was one of my questions, does it have internet? Because if I have internet, I don't need satellite, I don't need anything else, because I can do Hulu, I can do all kinds of stupid stuff, right? So, it's a huge deal. I'm a big supporter of the broadband grants. The other thing we need to do, I was talking to the Stearns County Administrator, talking about Stearns County applying for those grants. Because it would be great for Stearns County to step to the plate and help us put that stuff in.
I fully agree that state border to border, we do need the service, without a doubt. Goes on an education level. It also affects our businesses. The business that I own, the building that I own, one of our businesses, because of their need for internet access, is struggled, and they are incurring a huge cost having to transport things to the metro just to get their work done on some of the because of the nature of their business. One of the other things is telemedicine. When I've talked about accessibility to healthcare, we've got seniors that may need to just be able to access healthcare without actually having to go into a clinic or into a hospital. And so it does affect all of us. Yes, there's a priority. Do I have an answer standing here? No, not right now, but I would believe that it is in the best interest of Minnesota to invest in that.
You heard Representative Howe say he can do hula. Does anyone have a grass skirt? Not the visuals too much. Broadband has become the electricity of the 21st century. In the early 20th century, rural Minnesota didn't have electricity. Not until 1937, when they installed it at my grandfather's farm, did we have any electric farms west of the Mississippi River in the whole country. And so Charles Ness, my grandfather, had the first all-electric farm. But, you know, we need to prioritize. We need to, I mean, it's a lot of money, but we need to find a way to do this. In my case, I have a pine tree 50 feet up. Well, it's higher than that. But they put the dish 50 feet up, so I know I'm up to 10, anyways. But we need to deal with this. There are three things that I look at in terms of the growth of rural Minnesota that we need to do something about: affordable housing, daycare, and broadband. Those three things have to be foremost in what we're trying to do to maintain and stimulate the economy in greater Minnesota.
One last chance for one more question. Otherwise, we'll move into the summary. Okay, we will give them two or 2.5 minutes. Let's give them 2.5 minutes of summary. Starting with.
Thank you again, all of you, for coming and at the second shift of our candidate forum for the evening. I began going door to door nearly a year ago, at a time when most people thought the 2018 election was very, very far away. I had to sort of apologize. I know it's a long time before the election. I tried to get to every house, so I have to start early. Now, nearly a year later, it's the opposite. Many people are tired of the election. They're suffering election fatigue. They get piles and piles of mailers. And yet, I think people still appreciate the personal visit. They see that I'm not a mailer, that I'm a human being. And I think that's important to our politics. I tell people when I go door to door, I hope to earn your vote. But I also say that if elected, I will listen to everyone. I will do my best to represent everyone, regardless of who they support as. Most of all, I want us to come away recognizing one another as fellow citizens, not as foreigners or enemies. My job is I teach political science. I help young men and young women understand our political system. I try to encourage them to see that they can disagree politically without being enemies. That should go without saying, but so much of the world sends a different message. There's a lot of toxic, ugly stuff in our politics. If you look at the mailings that come out, there was one with me, a big red X over my face. I may look that way on Halloween, but I don't usually look that way. There's a lot of money driving the division. It doesn't mostly come from the candidates. I think it comes from these outside money. I still believe in conversation, though. I believe that we can cut past that in conversation. I thank you for having this conversation tonight, and I would be very honored to have your vote in November. Thank you.
Well, thank you. You know, if you ask my wife what I am, she'd tell you I'm a public servant. I've served all that. I served 27 years in the fire service. I served, let's see, 38 years in the military, just retired last year. Served on the city council. And so that's kind of what I do. I serve the people. I've served in the legislature for 6 years. Of course, my wife is wondering when it's my time to serve her, but that's coming. You know, I failed at one thing. I failed at retirement. I've tried it 3 times. I just can't get used to it. I can't get it done. So I keep working. But I will tell you that it's important to me. What got me into politics in the first place was after my first deployment, I was the commander of 250 young men and women over in Iraq. Those 250 young men and women did everything and more what our country and what I asked them to do. And when they got back here, they struggled. And so that's what drove me to run, because what my passion is veterans. I truly believe if we take care of veterans, I think, who was it? Was it George Washington said that you can rate a nation by how they treat their veterans? Well, I want to make sure that we're treating our veterans good. I've done a lot so far. I think there's more to do, because I truly believe if we find that we treat our veterans good, this will be a great place for the rest of us to live. If we make this a good place for them to live, raise their families, and retire, it'll be a great place for the rest of us. So that's what drives me. That's what my focus is. My other focus, I guess, I serve on the transportation board. I was a transportation officer. I was a logistics guy in the Navy, or in the National Guard and the Army on my deployments. I know what it is like to have a poor infrastructure when you're trying to move things, whether by air, boat, or land. It's very important. That's what drives our economy. If you can't move your product, it's worthless. Can't get it to market. So those are the things that drive me. I greatly appreciate it. I hope I've done a good job for you. And I hope you realize that. I've built a relationship that makes a difference. So thank you very much.
Again, I want to thank you for being here for last call, last show, and staying with us. To me, the fact that you are here shows that you care about our area. I was actually born in Paynesville, in our district. When I was 7, we moved to the metro area, and then by choice I came back as a young adult to Paynesville, and now having lived in Cold Spring for 20 years. This is a great place to be, and we have family values. We have a very strong, hard work ethic. We have our farms, our agriculture. We have tradition, and that is something that I want to bring your voice to St. Paul, to let people know who we are and what we're about. I think as we pull together and work as a community, we all become stronger. I do volunteer work with one women's organization. We have 2 things that we really focus on. It's empowering women in leadership and in their families and in their faith journeys. And then we also come around and support single moms in their journey and empower them in that way. And I think if we can have strong communities, starting from wherever people are at, whatever family structure actually it looks like, we're going to be better because of that. Those areas, again, that I said in the beginning that I'd like to focus on are our education, the E12, the healthcare and the cost, because that affects all of us, and then that workforce sustainability. How are we training trades to come in and work for us? How are we training our students and maybe displaced workers where they can still be an effective part of our community? Those are the things that I want to focus on. When I was first asked if I would consider a run, one of the things that I said is, I will, but I won't be negative in it. Do you still want me? And I was told absolutely yes. So I believe that we can work across party lines, across differences in our backgrounds, in our ethnicity, to become a stronger Minnesota, and that's what I want to be a part of it. Thank you again for being here.
Yes, thank you. It's a great thing that you do this every couple of years. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Not going to ask you for your votes because that would be illegal. But I just want to say that I have the experience, the knowledge, and the ability to get things done, and a history of doing so in the Minnesota legislature. Again, I chair the Capital Investment Committee, one of the highest profile and important of all committees. In the last couple of years, we did record amounts in bonding. $2.5 billion if you count everything that we did in transportation and other areas. Record amounts for local roads and bridges. We did record amounts as well for PFA funding. That's the pipes that go under your streets. That's the water towers, the wastewater treatment plants. We put more money into that than ever before. It was my firm goal to deal with the needs of Minnesota, not so much what people want in bonding. And we were largely able to get that done. I am proud that I was the chief sponsor of legislation to restore our state capitol building. I guess it'll be my legacy. But there's another that I'm working on this session, civics education. 1 in 4 of our Minnesota students who graduate from high school are not proficient in government knowledge. I want to make things easier on Professor Reed. 3 things determine my decision making: conscience, constituent, and caucus, in that order. We hear a lot about gridlock. I must work with the other party to pass a bonding bill. It has to have a supermajority. An editorial writer for the Star Trib noted, quote, "Legislators who take governing seriously will put aside their one-party notions and pursue ideas with bipartisan appeal. Not many legislators can do that easily. Urdahl is showing them how," unquote. And so, again, I believe that I'm well suited to work with others to achieve goals and meet needs here and statewide. I've shown that before, but more needs to be done. Thank you very much.
And Dean, I want to thank you for your great appreciation. And I want to thank you all folks for being here as well and staying until past 9:30. And thank all of you folks behind me here for stepping forward to the plate to want to serve. But I'll tell you what I've been doing the last 5 months is I've been knocking doors. I've knocked all of Painesville, all of Cold Spring, all of Richmond, all of Rockford, all of Holding Fort, all of Kimball, all of St. Stephen, all of Avon, finished St. Joe, put 15 days into Sauk Rapids, and I'm working on Sartell. And I've talked to a lot of people, and a lot of people are concerned about a good number of things. Number 1 seems to be healthcare. Another one seems to be, well, as I knock the mobile home parks, affordable housing, where can they find a place to live? Another one has been how to pay for college. I talked to a student that was in Sauk Rapids. He started out with a loan of $60,000. He's at 8% on the student loan. Now he owns $92,000 making minimum payment. That's just not right. I talked to people up in Oak Hole. They're short 15 welders. They don't have those welders. We need to make sure that our kids are getting trained in the trades. Talk to roofers that are short workers. There's jobs out there, but we got to find people that'll take those jobs. But if there's one thing I want you to take away from this tonight, and that is that my life here has always been on people, and my focus here has always been on people. As an Eagle Scout, as a church member, as a coach, as a teacher, as a neighbor, as a councilman, as a mayor, and as a county commissioner, I've always been focused on the people and not the parties and the politics. It's not about me, though. It's about you. It's about each and every one of you that are here tonight. And it's about your kids. It's about your grandkids. It's about the elderly. It's about the people with special needs. It's about making sure we have jobs, good education, health care, and make sure people are treated fairly. But this can only be done if we work together. We can build a better Minnesota by using common sense and working together. Democrats and Republicans together. As I stated earlier, the Constitution says, we the people, not we the party. And again, I want to say that throughout the remainder of this campaign, I'm going to try to run a clean campaign, just as I had all the time, and I hope all the other candidates do as well. Again, I'm not running against Jeff, I'm running for Joe Perske, but more importantly, I'm running for you.
Okay, that concludes our activities or presentation for the evening. Again, I want to thank the 5 up here for their second show of the day. I appreciate the chance that we could reschedule this. I truly thank each and every one of you for being here. I certainly hope you've had the opportunity throughout the evening to at least hear some things that will help you in your decision when it comes to the time of your voting in November. So thank you again to everyone, and have a safe journey home. Thank you.